I feel like we are living in unprecedented times right now, the San Francisco 49ers. When is the last time you guys remember having 20 different players on the defensive line on the 90-man roster? That is a huge chunk of the percentage. I can't even believe it. In this video, we're going to talk about a key player who's going to be on the chopping block right now. He's already on notice. We're going to talk about him, several others, and I've got some cool stuff later in the video too about how Brock Purdy is processing injuries. There's lots of great stuff. We're going to get into all of it in this episode. Hit subscribe if you're looking for daily 49ers content. Question for you guys today, and just curious how you guys are feeling with the breaking news today being that the 49ers are signing Malik Turner. Been a 49er a couple times here. Turner went to the UFL with Michigan in 2025, had 365 yards, 4 touchdowns, exploding for 269 yards and 4 TDs in the postseason. NFL vet brings depth to SF's receiver room. Let me know what you guys think about that move. How do you feel about that? I know a lot of people are out there saying, go get Gabe Davis. A lot of people out there wishing for Amari Cooper. But how do you feel that the vet the 49ers brought in is a vet, a UFL vet now, I suppose, but also former NFL vet too, of course. I'm just curious where you guys are at on that. I think we're going to get into some of the Juwan Jennings stuff later in the episode, especially for those of you who have been somewhat critical of me around the 40. I get it. Okay, that's fine. I respect it. That's what makes talking about sports super fun. But anyway, I'm going to get to that stuff later in the episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's jump straight into the news that we're talking about today, if I could get anything to work. There we go. We have stuff actually happening here. So firstly, we do have movement incoming. Part of the movement is because of Malik Turner and because of injuries. Again, can you believe it? 49ers placed Bradley Anae on IR to make room for Malik Turner. Rough break for the edge rusher who led UFL in pass rush win rate before leading the 49ers with 3 pressures in their preseason opener. Thought he looked pretty good in the opener. Had definitely had some presence there, which is all I ask in those early games. Like, just be a presence. Be a guy that makes people think twice about what they're doing, and I thought he did that. Matt Barrows talked about kind of what this means in terms of current injuries and things like that. 49ers defensive ends that are injured. Mykel Williams should be back soon, but he's injured with a knee. Okuwanu, Robert Beal, Yetur Gross-Matos should be back any day now. Like, I'm still confused. I keep thinking it's going to happen. And now Anae goes to IR. Healthy defensive ends, Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff, Jonathan Garvin, Jalen Allen, and Travis Gibson, who they just signed as well. But the thing that's interesting is more movements coming, because then just a couple hours ago, I saw these posts popping up in my feed as the 49ers signed a couple of the players that they tried out today. So I wasn't even going to bother. I'm not going to bother telling you about who the 49ers tried out, because half of them got signed. They signed Damone Harris and William Bradley King. So those are the guys that the 49ers brought in, and that puts the roster somewhere around 20 to 22 total defensive linemen, depending on who gets cut and how all that plays out on the 90-man roster tomorrow. So expect more movement, because some guys are going to get cut tomorrow. That's going to happen. They have to make space for all of these moves that are happening. So that's pretty wild to think about. I'm sure they've actually already been cut. We just don't know who they are yet. But all that being said, there are some stock changes happening around us. I thought Matt Barrows did the best job. There's a lot of people out there doing this. I thought Matt Barrows did the best job in kind of talking about what those changes are looking like. And so you can see some players in here who I expected to be key contributors this year. The biggest one being Marquise Siegel up, Jair Brown down. Jair Brown is a guy that looked really good in 2023 coming in for Hufanga. And then 2024 looked a little bit less secure, a little more found out. And I expected him to bounce back. Everything he said, everything he's done in the offseason really pointed me in the direction of thinking he's gonna step back up and he's gonna play at that level. And unfortunately, he hasn't been doing it yet. Marquise Siegel getting all the love right now. So there's a shot that Jair Brown is not your starting safety at the beginning of the season, which is unbelievable to me. To think you lost Hufanga and you have Malik Mustafa down and Jair Brown is not your starting safety. Those were your 3 starting safeties last year. That's crazy. So there's a key player who he's on the chopping block. At least the starting position is on the chopping block. Chase Lucas up, Trey Brown down, Braden Willis up, Jake Tonjes down. Now, Ross Dwelley doesn't totally surprise me. I'm not going to bother going into that one, but Jake Tonjes does surprise me a little bit. Coming into the season, looking a lot to me and a lot of other people, looking like your tight end 3. You bring in Luke Farrell, you have George Kittle, and your next guy up. A lot of people like the potential and the ceiling for Jake Tonjes, but apparently maybe it's not going so well for him. Corey Kiner and Jordan James is an interesting one because Corey Kiner's stock goes up, Jordan James' stock goes down, but they gave him so much draft capital. I can't see them dropping him. But if Corey Kiner continues to show out and Jordan James can't play, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I do not think he would, I'm not sure if either of them will make it through waivers, to be fair, to make it to the practice squad. So that's interesting there. When you think about how many running backs you're going to carry, you don't want to let these guys go considering how many of them have been injured. You've got Isaac Guerrero there who will be coming back. You have Jordan James who will be coming back. Obviously, you'd like if, Amir Abdullah, he might be one of your guys that's gone, right? Obviously, you have Christian McCaffrey. How many running backs are you going to hold? Because you also hold a fullback. So you're holding a position that not all the teams do hold. I feel like the number's 4. If it's more than 4, that would be kind of scary what that means for the rest of the roster considering all the depth concerns. And so I just don't know how many spaces are available. If Corey Kiner continues to take advantage of his opportunity, he might get that look. We'll have to wait and see. I really like Jordan James. I don't want to see that happen. Another one that kind of is sad to see, Sebastian Valdez up. That's great to see, but sad to see Evan Anderson, UDFA, last year's UDFA spotlight, a guy that I was really excited about and who did step up in several instances during the early part of the season with injuries on the defensive line, Javon Hargrave going down, and guys like Evan Anderson and Sam Okuanu coming in there and doing a great job. So I'm really bummed to see his stock is down right now, but he has 2 more preseason games and a couple more weeks to figure this one out. We'll have to wait and see. I think it is August 25th or 28th is the cut down day. It's one of those days. It's somewhere around that time. And then Nick Sikel down and Matt Hennessy up. Nick Sikel being a guy that last season looked like he was really, especially before he got injured, looking like a guy who was going to be your guaranteed backup at center, potentially more. Like he was that player. It could be your IOL and kind of center included, but it's looking like his stock is way down today. Interestingly, Kyle Shanahan had something really fascinating to say about the roster mindset. This is like a 2-minute clip. So if you're like, I don't have time for 2 minutes, just double tap on the right side of the screen and skip over the next segment. So we're going to be talking about something else in just a moment. But I thought I'm going to play the whole clip because it's really good from Sirius XM. But here's Kyle Shanahan's perspective. I think it's really positive on the roster as it currently stands and how he's building it. And here's how he's processing it.
When we got here in 17, we knew we had a roster that we really had to completely change over. And, in the first year, we changed 10 out of 11 guys on offense. Joe Staley was the only one who remained. And on defense, we did 8 out of 11. So we had a big turnover, and we did it all with we did it all with draft picks. And to me, you don't hit on every draft pick, but we hit on a lot, and we got some difference makers in there, and that kind of became the core of our group from 19 all the way till now. And we brought in a couple different people with Christian and Trent that we did through trades, but everyone else has kind of been homegrown and through the draft. And fortunately, we've been able to keep some of those guys, and that's to me the biggest difference between now and 17 is that some of these guys that have been here are still here, and we got a group of players, whether it's 5, whether it's 7, whatever it is, that are different makers, some borderline Hall of Fame players too. But when you look at the rest of the roster, that's what reminds me a little bit more of 17 and 18, that we need to add a bunch of youth. We need to get guys who are younger, so obviously we can afford to keep some of these players, also having to pay a quarterback and things like that. So whenever that happens, you do depend on young guys. But when you get young guys, it also makes it a little bit more built to last. And we're kind of in between in those areas, because when you got guys like Christian, guys like Trent, Bosa, Fred, there's a number of them. It's hard to kind of say that you're rebuilding, because you got guys there who can carry you. But in the NFL, it doesn't matter how good those stars are. You got to have the right type of team. And we know we got some young guys that haven't done it yet. But that's what's so big about this year. It's what's so big about camp is we're finding out a lot about these guys every day. And it'll be interesting who ends up being a part of our 53, which to me is more open now than it's been in about 6 years. But even on day one, that's not going to be it. Like week one, I expect our team in week 12, week 13 to look a lot different than it did in week one. And my whole goal is that we get better throughout the year and find a way to hopefully get into those playoffs. And once you get into those playoffs, then you got a chance at anything.
Crazy. I mean, just a really wild but really helpful perspective coming from Kyle Shanahan. I literally feel like he sat down with the PR team and was like, how do we frame this in the best way? I don't actually think that happened. I'm just telling you that's how clean and crisp that came out. Really, really thoughtful from Kyle and how he's processing the difference between now and the 2017 roster rebuild that he did back then. And it definitely does feel like this is a retooling, not a rebuilding. But then when you look at everything that you're up against, it feels like rebuilding. You're bringing in and trying out different players every single day, and you're bringing in all these dudes, constantly bringing in new guys because of all the injuries. And so it does feel really rebuildy. It feels like you don't know who you have and you don't know what your talent is yet, and it feels that way, right? So the cool thing about it is I thought he kind of reflected a little bit about what I talked about yesterday with don't forget about the ones. But there are still so many strong, stable players that you're building this team around that you don't have to ask all those rookies to come in and be the leaders of the room from the outset. So I love that. That's a really cool thing. And you're not building the culture from scratch. You have the culture. You're just adapting it to the new youth. And we've heard several players talk about how the energy of all the young players coming in has been really good for them. I can only imagine the amount of movement going on is going to do two things. All these players coming in and doing tryouts constantly, like the Robbie Chosens and all these dudes who are just constantly coming around and trying out, and then some guys make the team and some guys don't. One, that's got to have great effects now in terms of the unsettledness people feel and their intensity and willingness to get after it, right, in practice. Like they're going to give their best. It has to create that unsettled feeling, I imagine. But number two, the guys who make the 53 are going to be so hyped. It's going to be such a really cool moment for all those players that make it. And it's really interesting for Kyle Shanahan to go out of his way several times this offseason now and say that this team is not figured out. This is the most unknown a 53-man rosters looked in a very, very long time. And we're talking like it's August 13th, and he's saying that, right? Now, on one hand, that's kind of scary. But if you buy into Kyle's vision and you buy into, I'm not worried about week 1 because I'm thinking about week 13, if that's where you're at, all of a sudden, everything looks a lot better for you right now as a 49ers fan. So I think, I like that. I'm just going to take hold of that. I'm going to take a little bit of like notes there because I live in the moment. I live in this this day in, day out injuries, players coming in, players getting signed, players getting dropped. I'm living in that, and it's helpful for me at least to be thinking, hey, don't forget that we just need to, the first half of the season right now, we just need to get the rookies we need to bring them in and get them up to speed and get them in rhythm. If you can do that in the first half of the season and churn out some wins during that time against some tough or against some weaker opponents, then by the second half of the season, you can start finding a rhythm. And then there you go. Like make the playoffs and see what happens, because you do have a lot of veterans on this team that have been there and they know what to do and they know how to go about it. And they know that feeling that they have in their mouth from losing the Super Bowl twice. They know that feeling and they're ready to get another shot at it. They're ready to go turn it around and change things. I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl bound team this year. I'm not saying that, all right? I'm just saying I get where Kyle Shanahan is coming from, and maybe midway through the season, you're starting to feel really different about how this team is shaping and who it's shaping up to be. Last year's team was a team that believed they had it all. They went out there, they expected to win every day, and they didn't. And they didn't have the character to turn it back around. Some of them didn't. They didn't have the character to do it. They didn't have the leadership to do it, for sure, on the defensive side of the ball and special teams. And then now we're looking at a team who going into it is already saying this is a journey, and where we are now versus where we are week 10. Like that, they're already going into it with that mindset. I think that's really healthy. Speaking of healthy mindsets, Brock Purdy. had a really interesting insight to share on how he's dealing with the injury situation. You know, nobody's thinking about Brock Purdy. You poor guy. Who are you throwing to? And it's not as concerning who you're throwing to. My bigger concern is, are you going to find a rhythm and be consistent with these guys? Because you're changing your wide receivers all the time. You have Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall back, but they were injured too. So everybody except for George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey have been out. And so you've had to try and figure out, like, finding rhythm with all these different dudes. Here is how Brock Purdy, Brock, we love Brock. This is how he's processing. Obviously, as a quarterback, what matters most is the offseason OTAs camp, getting the routes on air, competing against the defense with the guys that obviously are going to be throwing the ball to in season. And it can be frustrating when guys are dealing with little injuries and things like that. This is who he's talking to CBS Sports here, by the way. But for me, I just try to go out there every single day, do my job with Kyle and Kubiak and Lombardi are asking of me for getting my answer within every play. But obviously, I would love to have my guys out there, but some guys are dealing with certain things. By the way, speaking about dealing with certain things, Juwan Jennings. Obviously, we learned the other day, I think it was yesterday, the day before, Tim Kawakami saying that the team and Juwan Jennings are not close to a contract. Okay, so that's what we have. And there's a lot of people now saying basically this, okay, which is completely reasonable, in my opinion. You can disagree with me, Joe. That's okay. I respect you, Joe. I do, genuinely. This is where Juwan Jennings ranks now among wide receivers in APY. Kendrick Bourne, Brandon Cooks, Juwan Jennings, Rome Odunze, and Drake London. Okay, right in that range there. If the 49ers were to extend Jennings at $22 million per year, that would be tied for 19th. He would be around Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs. Both of these ranges seem unfair to me. That is such a good way to describe it, Kevin Kruger. Love it. By the way, Larry Kruger, he believes this is a hold-in for what it's worth. Again, I'm telling you, I don't know whether it is or not. My gut is that it's kind of more of a hold-in. But then with Kyle Shanahan talking about injuries, maybe it's not a hold-in. I don't know. All I know is I wouldn't blame him if he was doing whatever he had to do to try and get paid. I wouldn't blame him because I understand these guys go out there and they put their bodies on the line. And Juwan Jennings, of all players on this football team, Juwan Jennings goes out there just like George Kittle too. Like, he puts his body on the line. So if his whole career could flash before his eyes every given play because of how hard he plays, I get that. I respect it. And I'm not about to get in between somebody and them trying to get paid. Now, I think there are ways to go about it and ways not to. And I respect that Juwan Jennings, if he is holding in, is not making a big fuss about it. And he's not making a drama about it. If he is holding in, I don't know. Either way, I respect Juwan Jennings to the moon and back. But this point by Kevin Kruger is so good. It feels completely unfair to be paying him with the Rome Odunzes. It doesn't seem right to be paying him, $5.6 million per year to the value he's provided this football team up to this point. But Juwan Jennings also, a year ago, gets a contract extension, and he gets a contract extension for being a guy with 35 receptions a season. That's where he was. And he's not a wide receiver 2. We're asking him to be a wide receiver 1, but he's a wide receiver 3 on this depth chart, technically, based on draft capital, based on expectation, based on what the front office wants out of him. I'm not telling you that's right or wrong. I'm telling you that's how I think the front office sees him. And that puts them in a really difficult situation. They cannot pay him like a wide receiver 2 unless they expect him to be a wide receiver 2. And Juwan Jennings has been incredible. I hate even talking about the money when it comes to him because I'm like, dude, just pay him. Figure out a way to pay him because the guy is he's a culture guy. He builds your team. He builds your locker room. I love Juwan Jennings. And so do you. And any Niners fan should love him because he's fantastic. He's an incredible player. He gives everything on the field, and he's the type of guy that sets the tone. And you need guys like that in the locker room. You need guys like that on the field. But I do also respect that the front office has their hands really tied up on this one because Juwan Jennings goes out there and basically does the job all last season as your wide receiver 1. He gets a 1,000-yard season, whatever, just shy of 1,000. I'm still going to call it a 1,000-yard season. He earned it, in my opinion. He has a 1,000-yard season, which is way, way beyond what they paid him to do last year. He went way above and beyond. However, if they don't value him as the guy, he's not like a guy rising up in the ranks and becoming the future. Jauan Jennings is still not great at separation. He has incredible hands, and he makes up for lack of separation with great hands. But the 49ers last year had horrible separation. They were at the bottom of the league in separation last year. So I don't want to see the game built, this team built around Jauan Jennings. No disrespect. If you want to build a game around character, leadership, energy, enthusiasm, then he's your guy, 100%. Do you want him in the locker room? Absolutely. But we need Brandon Aiyuk talent. Like, we need that level of talent. We need Ricky Pearsall to be a first-round draft pick and actually go out there and produce like a first-round draft pick is expected to produce. We need that. We can't get away without that, right? And Jauan Jennings is not the fastest guy in the world, and he's not the greatest separator in the world. He's incredibly consistent, and you would love to have him on your team. And unfortunately, guys like that, when they go and have 1,000-yard seasons, it's really hard to keep them around. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I really don't. I really hope the 49ers find a deal, somehow find a way to do a deal with him, because I love him and I'd love for him to be on this team for a long, long time. But I just don't think that at his age, too, I just don't think that they're going to be handing out a big deal. The timing isn't great for him, and the money doesn't really make sense either. It's just a really, really tough position for the 49ers and for Jauan Jennings, because he had a 1,000-yard season. He deserves the right to ask for a better contract. I'd never love that when you're a year off your extension, but also it was a 2-year extension. So you're always going to be a year off on a 2-year extension. That's the way that it goes. So I don't fault Jauan Jennings for being like, dude, he went and got a 2-year, and now next year he's going to play well and he's going to want another 2-year. Like, you know what I mean? So if you don't give him a 3-year or 4-year, you can't be mad when he comes and says he's ready for another one after how well he played. So look, let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Tomorrow is joint practice with the Raiders, and then we are 3 days away, of course, from the preseason game this Saturday. Hyped about it. Can't wait to talk to you about it and watch it. I'll be covering it, of course, and looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comments.